Here we go. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to Freedom Starts Now. I'm here every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. And Freedom Starts Now really is all about making that decision to have a better life, to, maybe move forward in something, whether it be relationships, which we're going to talk about today. And so that's what Freedom Starts Now is about, is just really, like I said, just make that decision to make a change because, lately I've been hearing a lot of people who are just feeling really stuck and they're not sure what to do. And it's like, just make that decision that you want to make a change. And a lot of times we need to hire coaches, maybe do some personal development, whatever that is for you, right? So welcome to Freedom Starts Now. I'm excited to introduce you, and I'm going to pull up here. I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today, Judith. Wow, speaking today seems to be a little bit tongue-tied, right?
Tuesday. It's Thursday. I keep thinking it's Tuesday, so I'm worse than you.
Anyway, welcome Judith Jameson. There we go. I did
there
it.
You are.
Who has been a relationship coach for 13 years now. And I've had the privilege to get to know you and be part of the same networking group as you called Great Connection. Judith helps men and women succeed in the areas of love. Date to find a mate, repair and restore a marriage. I mean, where were you when I was married, right? I could have used you back then. Although sometimes things are just meant to happen the way they do. Or navigate the confusion of separation or divorce. What sets Judith apart from other coaches and traditional counselors is her unique resume of paralegal degree, plus many life coach certificates, counseling programs, not to mention her own life's lessons from two divorces, one with her son, and the other with teen stepdaughters. Oh, I can't wait to hear more of your story.
Yeah.
So anyway, welcome, Judith. And tell us more. What else? Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Tell us a bit more about you and how this all came about.
Yeah. So going back 14, 15, 16 years ago, I had made a career change to become a paralegal. And I was really excited about it. And when I was going to school at BU up here in Boston, I said, well, the only part of this paralegal program I am not interested in is family law because it's messy. Who wants to be in that, right? So I'm like, no, I'm going to be in corporate. I'm going to just focus on corporate law or taxations or accounting. And I'm going to go work for corporations because my background is corporate. So I'm like, it's a no-brainer. Do this, go work for a legal department, right? Say yes to a trademark, do a registered trademark, and you're done for the day, But what happened was I landed in these law firms in Lexington, Mass, which is outside of Boston, and Cambridge, Mass, which is right next to Boston, and Boston, which is Boston. And I was not working in family law. I will make that perfectly clear because no way did I want anything to do with that. But what happened was I would see these poor people emotionally distraught and broken coming in and sitting in the waiting rooms and waiting for their big power legal team to come get them and take them into the big fancy conference room. And these people would be, a lot of times they're vulnerable, they're crying, they're emotional, they're nervous, they don't know the process. They look like deer in the headlights, when you can see their eyes when they're not crying and stuff. So I really felt a lot of empathy for them, not sympathy, empathy, because I could empathize. There's a difference, right? Because I've been in those shoes because I'd already gone through one divorce. Unbeknownst to me, I was about to go through a second one, but I didn't know that. And what happened was I just felt like, I got tapped on the shoulder by the, whatever you want to call your powers that be in the universe. But the universe was saying, this isn't right. This isn't right. These people are not being taken care of. They're not being treated well. The paralegals that worked for those attorneys were never treated well. And yes, it's a high stress thing, right? Like, it's like you can get an emergency restraining order for that day and everything drops. And the paralegal is the one doing all the work. Let's be honest. Right. Yeah. But it's how they said things. It's how they treated the paralegals. It's how I was noticing how they approached their clients. So the clients were cookie cutter. And it reminds me of, I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, it's human nature that you you go to school and you learn about your trade, and then you do it a certain way. So like, that's why we say when we have a major medical event, don't just go with the first doctor, because 3 will have a different opinion on what you and I think is like, well, it's a no-brainer. Like the arm has to come off, right? And someone's going to say, no, I think I can stitch it up. Or no, there's this new doctor in New York that can do it. Okay, so there's options. But people were not getting their second and third consultations. You know, people listen to people like you and I. It's like, you know, oh my God, you know, my friend's going through divorce. And I say, oh, well, I used Sally in Boston. You should have your friend call Sally in Boston. First of all, you know, I don't know if I got a good divorce, and neither does the other person, right? Like for my first divorce, I thought I got a good divorce until later on when I got smarter as a paralegal. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know because I wasn't in the legal field. But what I saw was the attorneys were very insensitive. Most of them had not been through a divorce. A lot of them are younger. I think they went into it because it's low hanging fruit. You know, statistically, they say 50%. It's actually a little bit less, but yes, there's a 50% chance someone out there in the world is going to come into your office for a divorce. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like the things that they were saying. They were like making fun of a client that came in and cried, or they'd say, or they'd say, I can't believe this person keeps calling me and asking me the same question. Or I can't believe, you know, John Brown or Jane Brown is still coming in here without her paperwork. So they don't get it. They don't understand the emotional trauma and distress that's going on inside and back at home, that they can't do this paperwork. They can't get what the attorney needs. So that's kind of what drove me into it. And I just quit my job one day. I said, I'm quitting in 2 weeks. I'm going to make this thing up I'm going to call it divorce coaching. And that's how it started. I just made it up. So.
Wow. Now, did you take courses in, like, have you taken courses in coaching?
I have now. But when I first left, I didn't. So there's no requirement to be a coach to have coach training. There's no regulations or anything for that. So I felt like with my personal experience, because I was going through a second divorce at that time when I quit the job at the law firm. So I had a personal experience with how this works. And not only that, but I was at this point, I was now teaching 4 times a year a divorce program called Divorce Care. And it's run all over the world. And typically you're divorced and you're giving back. And that's what I do. There's no charge for it. So I was moving and grooving in this space, like big time. I'd gone through the program twice, and then I turned around and started leading it. And I've never looked back. I've been doing that since 2009.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. I'm sure you're probably getting really busy now too, right? I mean, I feel like I'm like everywhere I turn, there's people getting divorced. Some are, you know, a little bit friendlier than others, you know, and what's the word of amicable?
Yeah. Some are amicable.
That's it. Yep. That's the right word.
Yay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, you know, I think of when I was going through my divorce, my separation and everything. And I just, you know, and I remember that stress, and I still remember thinking like, what the hell just happened? It's like such a whirlwind. Right. And then, but I remember at one point I agreed to go see, you know, a coach. And I think actually, now that I think about it, that could have been my first experience. And I still remember she obviously wasn't the greatest coach, because here I am, like I was pissed with my husband, and like just all of these different emotions of like, I didn't even know what the heck I wanted. And the first thing she said to us is like, you know, pick out the things you like about each other, you know, write out what you don't like. And
wait a minute. You mean before you went through the divorce, you went there for like marriage help?
Yes. Sorry. Yes. I guess I need to clarify that. Yeah. So I agree. So my ex was like, you know, let's try and go see a marriage counselor. Right. So I finally, after a while, I was like, because we lived together for a while and stuff. Anyway, so I finally thought, okay, you know what? I'm willing to give it a try. But I had a lot of anger in me. But anyway, and I still remember seeing this coach. And she's like, the first thing was like, okay, what's the problem? Where you guys got your issues, yada, yada. And then I want you to write out what you like and what you dislike with each other. Okay, fine. And then we come back for our second visit, and she's like, okay, I want you guys to hold hands and, you know, give each other a kiss. And at that point, I'm like, right now, I don't even like him. Like, why are you like, what? Anyway, just to say that didn't work. It was just very strange, right?
Yeah, that's kind of bass backwards. I would never do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even know really where I was going with that story, but you know, as
Well,
I
you've seen it, and what I like is that, I hate to say this, but what I like is your story of affirming why I do what I do, because I had marriage counseling too.
yeah,
And mine didn't work for different reasons. And that was one of the things that threw me into this, was I like, people are not getting help from their counselors if they're going to counseling for themselves or as a couple, and they're certainly not getting the right direction and help from the majority of their attorneys.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily getting good advice from their friends either. No offense.
No, but it's true, right? Because your friends aren't, your friends are your friends, but they're not always the ones that are, you know how to help you out through that, right? It doesn't mean that they're bad friends and stuff, right? But yeah, I think it's very cool. And I love listening to, you know, your tips and tricks and everything around that, because, you know, if you can, and I love how you say you've never had, what was it? Sorry, I'm trying to remember in your website, how you said you never had, a failure in coaching.
In marriage.
In marriage, yeah, in that. Sorry,
right. Well,
walking all
so
over.
with and so with the divorce coaching, which is where I started, because that was a clear use of my paralegal degree, because I, while I didn't want to go into family law, I had to study it, right? So I knew all about it. And I knew the laws pretty well anyway, because I'd gone through a messy divorce already. And then by the time I launched this, I was in the middle of my own second marriage, and this time there were stepkids. There was temporary alimony. It was like a whole different, you know, the first one was A through L, and this one was, you know, M and N O P, you know, it was completely different moving parts, right? So like my son wasn't really a part, other than getting him emotional support financially and whatnot. He wasn't part of that because he was already taken care of with the first divorce. So I look at it as training ground. I wouldn't recommend it, but, you know, wouldn't say it's fun to go through lots of relationships, but yeah. So with the divorce process, I said, my clients will never have, I will guarantee that they will not have divorce remorse, because most people do. And I was that way as well. I was very remorseful a year out with my first husband. And I felt like, because we didn't have a good marriage counselor, we could have done better if only, like I had said, look, this just isn't, it's not that I don't, you know, but I had given up by that point, and he was kind of giving up, and we were just exhausted. Right. But you know, if we'd gone sooner, if we had switched sooner, we probably could have had the help. The problem, again, is that marriage counselors are human also. And most of them haven't been through a divorce. So their textbook, like, they're like our friends. They have a little more training, but they're like our friends that haven't been through a divorce. They don't really get it. They hear how awful things were, and they can't understand, you know, people can't always understand, like, what our issue is that we can't detach. And we all have different reasons, but the marriage coaching, I mean, the divorce coaching, it's the emotional. So I went and got several life coaching certifications, like you had said, and I took a counseling program, you know, so that I could really understand what counselors are teaching and see if I could get some tips and tricks, right? Like what's a little secret in the sauce for how they work with people? Like, you know, maybe I'll learn some stuff that like my own therapist has never like put into play. But it's not that. It's that they're not getting the information that I feel people need to really be helped. And I had several professors in the counseling program take me aside and say, hey, psst, don't go into marriage counseling. I'm like, what? Because I wanted to get some specialized training for that, right? They're like, don't do it. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, go into like eating disorders. There's tons of work, and you don't have to be with the client for very long. It's a win-win, because you pass the client eventually off to a doctor or a hospital where they get their eating disorder taken care of. You're just getting through some of the emotional stuff and trying to get them ready for that. But eventually, you know, with a true eating disorder, you can't fix it in like an hour a week, which is actually only 45 minutes, by the way. They have to go to a hospital. So I'm like, well, that seems like kind of a crummy thing to say. And they're like, no, we're telling you right now privately, because I was older than the people that were like 28 who wanted to be a counselor and save the world. You know, I was there for a specific reason, just to get this extra additional training. They're like, listen, it doesn't work. These young people aren't going to go into marriage work because they haven't even been married yet. But marriage work doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't crumble in your office, it'll happen 6 months later when you don't even have them anymore, or it'll be 2 years later, they'll be divorced. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, this is true. It's a dirty little secret in the therapy world. So I'm like, well, you just inspired me even more to do this, because that's why I'm here. Because I'm so angry that we don't get good marriage counseling out there. Right.
Yeah.
And, they're not that accessible, and you only get 45 minutes. And if you have a problem, like, you need to talk to someone for 5 minutes, right? They're like, book an appointment. Like, you can't just call a therapist at 8:00 at night and say, hey, I just have a question. I know we don't see you anymore, but something came up. It's like, they won't answer the phone, first of all, after 5:00. You're not going to have their personal phone any time of the day. And no, make an appointment for 4 weeks out. Well, by then, your question's already just either answered or it's under the rug. So they don't have any remorse, because I make sure my clients, when it's going through a divorce, that they get lots of consultations. So they cannot go with the first attorney that they like. I don't care if you and I said, oh, call Bob. Nope. You need to meet 3 of mine. So if you already met one, yay you. I'm going to research that person, because I'm not sure I'm going to approve of the person that you met with. And then I'm going to get you 3 consultations. So even when I do it in Brazil, even when I do it in Vancouver, Canada, even when I do it in the UK, I'm finding those attorneys through my connections. And I interview them first. So if you were getting divorced in the UK, I would go do the research. I would do the vetting. I would meet these people over the phone and Zoom. And then I would narrow it down to 3. So you don't have to do all that. And you can't do it, Karen, because you don't know what to ask them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, little things like billing, my clients don't know to ask that. And even if they did, they wouldn't understand what they said. Like, what's 1/10 of an hour? I don't know. Do the math, or are you charging me for a 2-minute call? Some will say no. How much does it cost you to send me an email? Is that 1/10 of an hour? I mean, no offense. Personally, I don't think it should be charged, but, there's not that much thought in an email that says, see you tomorrow at 2:00, just confirming our appointment at my law firm.
$300.
They charge you $38.50. You can read these bills. I'm telling you, I could do a business just on assessing people's, legal bills, because they're awful. And I find so many mistakes, but that's why they have no remorse afterwards. So I say no divorce remorse. I also make sure that they're absolutely ready to go through a divorce. If they aren't, then I'm like, then we're stopping it. Or your husband wants it, but we're going to stall. Right. So there are ways that people don't understand. And the other thing is, when I created this job, I said, my number one thing is to be available nights and weekends. Because, things don't happen at noon when you're eating a hamburger with a friend at a restaurant. They happen at 7:00 at night when you're making your dinner and your ex doesn't show up, or your soon-to-be ex was supposed to come over and give you papers, and then they don't show up with the papers, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Who do you call? You just call a friend because you want to vent, but they're not going to be able to give you the advice, so they call me. So I'm like, I'm JJ 911. That's what it is. I'm like, if there's no gun, you call me first.
Yeah.
You don't call the police. You don't call your friend. This is off the table with your friends and family, and you don't call the police unless there's a gun or somebody's chasing you into the woods. Other than that, you can call the cops for that. Other than that, no.
Got it. Yeah, it's funny you bring up lawyers, because it's taking me back to the time that I went through.
Yeah, right? I don't want to trigger you, but when you
oh my gosh, I don't think you can trigger me on this anymore. Yeah. Maybe back in the day. No, it's just it's a reminder that we don't, some of us don't know the legal system or what questions to ask, right? And I remember hiring a lawyer, and she was impossible to get a hold of. I actually ended up firing her as a lawyer, because I thought, why am I chasing you down for weeks and weeks? I don't know the steps to go through. So if I had someone like you, you would have, there would have been someone to help me, but I didn't know you then. But it was just and then finally I fired her. And the next thing you know, she's calling me all the time. Right. It's oh, well, I was going through this and I go through that. And I'm sorry you're going through your stuff, but that's, that's not my problem. Right. This is what I'm hiring you for. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, that's if I didn't show up for my clients and just said, oh, sorry, I'm going through this, but I didn't call you to let you know, they would be going somewhere else. Right. Yeah. So I ended up going with my ex-husband. We actually were able to share the same lawyer, because I thought, let's just make this easy. I don't want to go shopping. I don't want to do all this work because I don't know what to do. So it ended up being fine in the long run, but I've also, stayed, I've let go of so much stuff, done a lot of healing around that. And
Right.
yeah, so that's why I say you can't, I don't think there are any more triggers left because I've healed it, right? Because it comes back to us. But
Yeah, that's true. And your story is so typical because it's very common. I always tell my clients right up front, I'm telling you right now that no matter who we choose, because I'm part of the process, I even go to those meetings. I'm like, you're not going by yourself because you won't be able to tell me what happened in the meeting. Like, I'm watching their facial expressions. I'm seeing if they give a truthful, quick answer to our question, especially on billing and like your response time. And I take notes. So I'm like, I make it so easy because you just have to go and follow their lead, whatever they want to know, whatever questions they ask. And then what I think that they're not asking or information that I think the attorney should need, I'll turn to you and say, look, I think you need to tell the attorney about what happened, 4 weeks ago with Bob and Rachel up the street or whatever it is. And they're like, I don't know if they need to know that. I'm like, yeah, they need to know that. Because people consciously and unconsciously leave things out, especially if they're embarrassing. And I'm like, no, the more embarrassing, the better. If it feels uncomfortable, that's what the attorney needs to know about.
Yeah.
Exactly. So because I already know their story, I can do that. But it's so funny that you said that though, because I was laughing because when you started talking about it, I'm like, oh my God, this is so typical. I was that person too. So I assumed, like the big attorney that charges like $275, $350 an hour, like they have a fancy bookshelf unit in the real, they're lawyers. It's like, how you kind of look at doctors sometimes, right? So they're so busy, of course they're not going to get right back to me. But the point is, like you said, it's a service industry, just like you and I in our coaching businesses. They're paying for us to respond to them. Yeah. And people make excuses for lawyers like, well, I'm sure they have 5 other cases every day, because they're so good, right? I'm like, yeah, you and I are good at what we do, but we still get back to people, even if it's at midnight. Like, that's what I do. So there are a lot of lazy attorneys out there that do that. It's not okay. It has to be within 24 hours. The attorneys I worked with, I'm like, give me your cell phone. They're like, what? I'm like, give me your cell phone. Because if I'm not able to get you at 9:00 on a Saturday night, I'm going to give them my advice because you and I know that's when stuff happens, typically on the weekends. Yeah. So I have this great rapport with the attorneys that I work with. They love it because like they're not getting a call from a crazy client who's obsessing about the fact that she's probably going to lose one of the 5 cats because she bought all the cats. It's like, yeah, give up a cat,
Give up a cat.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But this is what people do. They call about crazy stuff and then they wonder why they get a bill because the attorney's like, that was a call. You get charged. Yeah. You get charged $350, even if you talk about your cats.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't talk about your cat.
No, but people do.
Well, if you have these questions, it's like, especially with the lawyer, you want to respect people's time. Right. And okay. But I think when you're going through that, you are definitely not like the client is not thinking straight at all.
Right.
I think about like the way I was, and I just like, it was like I was in this spinning out. Right. But I never bugged my lawyer. Yeah. Like I was one of those that I don't want to bug her, but I also need to understand what this, and this means. Right. So, Now, do you ever try, like when you meet your clients, do you ever start off like, okay, can we repair this marriage? Mm-hmm. Do you do that as well?
Yeah. So, cool. Yeah. So that's part. That's part of the process. Like to make sure that there's no divorce remorse. If I'm working with a client that's coming to me for, divorce help, I make sure during that first consultation, that's half an hour, 45 minutes, that they really want this and that it's not, well, my friend said I should dump him because he had an affair, or my friend said I should get rid of her because ABC, right? So I make sure that they're not just getting this advice that's, possibly for their well-being, but the fact of the matter is people can be too easy to dismiss somebody else's marriage. It's like, well, easy for you to say you're still married and you're not going to be alone like I'm going to be. So I always say, not everybody can change, but you're not going to know unless you give them a chance, right? I mean, that'd be like me saying to my kid, oh my God, you came home after 10 o'clock. You're never driving a car again. It's like, no, I forgive them. I say, don't do that again. And then we try to repair it, right? We've had a conversation. We move on. It's the same with a marriage. So I can effectively work with a husband or wife that doesn't want to get through, doesn't want a divorce. I can work with them to do 2 things. go back into the marriage initially. And then the second thing is hopefully get their spouse to want to cycle into marriage work.
Mm-hmm.
So I make sure that if they're talking to me about divorce work, that they're not secretly sad about leaving the marriage. Because if you're sad about it and you're not ready for it, then it may not go so swell. You're going to have regrets later that you should have given it one more try, or you should have waited till next year, whatever it is. There's all these different things. So yeah. So there have been times when, like right now, I have a couple out in California, and she's just so angry that she's just was assuming this is a divorceable moment. And I said, it is, but I want to talk to him because it sounds like you're open to marriage counseling, right? She's like, well, technically I call it coaching. She's like, well, I don't think he'll do it. We did it before. I'm like, I know. This is great. So now you can both compare what you had before to how I do it. It's completely different. I'm turning the world upside down, one couple at a time. It's not negative. You cannot fight with me. If you have a fight, you call me and we get through it in 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. And they're like, well, that doesn't seem right. I mean, if it's like, I'm like, secrets in the sauce, secrets in the sauce. You let go that you go like this. That says my hands are off the steering wheel. I'm going to trust the process, because one of the main problems with the marriage work that they had before was that it focused on negative things, right? You go in there and it's like, all right, tell me what's been going on. I'm like, well, that's just opening up the can of worms right there. I never do that. In the consultations, that's when they tell me everything. But it would have been, you like this for as long as you need. Because what I do is I leave 1 to 3 hours open on my calendar. Because some people say, well, I don't have a lot to tell you. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like, no. Right?
We all have a lot to say. Yeah.
I'm like, that was good to know, because if we cut it off like you thought we were going to do after 30 minutes, then I wouldn't know all these things. And then I meet with the other spouse like this. So they get all the stuff out, and I validate their anger. I validate their hurts. And I say, look, I get it, but you're not the first person, to cheat on a wife or a husband, or you're not the first person to like have an anger management problem, or you're not the first person to be battling depression. And it's really hard for your spouse to be around that. You're not unique. I know you think you're a unicorn out there, but dirty little secret. Trust me, you're not. I mean, every now and then I hear something kind of unique, but even when I hear that, I say, well, it's the first time for me hearing it from a client, but I know it's being heard by other people, right? Yeah. There is no such thing as one unique thing. It would have to be so outrageous. It would be like, Hannibal Lecter, that movie was awful, right? But everybody's Silence of the Lambs, right? And everybody's like,
oh my God.
Right? That's weird. That's weird. But there are sick people out there that do sick things to people and animals, and they have captive. And a lot of that stuff was just like, Vietnam, capture American soldiers 101 and then some. So, there is a lot of that stuff out there, but I'm telling you, Karen, I've never lost a couple.
I love that.
Never lost a couple to a separation and divorce. Even the ones that aren't married, they stay together, living together as they wanted to as partners.
That's amazing.
Not one.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, because it is, you are taking me back to that time. It's like, oh yeah, right. I forgot. Like I went to we did a bit of marriage camp, but I know, I've done so much personal development over the last, 5 years. Right. So I understand my part in that marriage and what were my triggers. And so I didn't know any of that back then. And I was looking for that quick fix, right? Like it's like people with health. I want that pill just to make it all go away. Right. But as you know, it's work. Right. And it doesn't have to be yucky work. I mean, you're going to have your ups and downs for sure. But you're right. Like, I think a lot of I'm remembering back then where, it was focused on the problems all the time. And I felt like, but then I also wanted, oh, well, he's not, if say we got a little bit of homework, like, it's like, here, go do your bills together. And I'm like, oh, this is romantic, but I don't know, maybe this is part of the process. Right. So, and then, we'd sit down one day, fantastic, great. And then we go to sit down another day. And then he wouldn't do it. And so I just said, forget it. This isn't working. And I know I gave up easy. I was like, oh, forget it. If he's not doing it, then I'm not doing it. Right. And then, then we'd, coast along because we were also both very good at sweeping everything under the rug. well, that was my family, right? Like that was my family growing up. Oh, there's a problem. Let's just put it under the rug and not deal with it, right? So I know how that can backfire as well, right? But and then,
so I have ways around. So I have processes and activities around that.
Yeah. So I think we ended up seeing like 3 or 4 different counselors, and then it was just, but I look back and it was me just going, oh, forget it. You're not doing it. This isn't working.
But you know what? So a lot of what's missing from the process, because they're trained to look at the past and they're trained to ask questions. And what people love about coming to me is it's like, look, I'm calling myself a coach and I'm going to compare it to traditional, let's say with the counseling, with the marriage work. Because there isn't really like divorce counseling, right? So traditional marriage counseling. If there was a marriage coach on a field, right? A traditional marriage counselor would say, lie down on the bench, little Billy or little Jane, you don't have to go out and play the game. Just lie here on the bench and tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking. What are the things that you used to like? What are the things that you don't like? Why is it that you don't like to go out and kick the ball? Let's talk about it. And did you ever play ball before? Like they try to attach it to something in the past, right? So what I say is, if you want to go dive into your childhood, do that afterward. Do that after the marriage work is done, because it's personal one-on-one time. Do your one-on-one time later. Right now, when it comes to marriage help or divorce help, you are in an emergency room. And that's what counseling doesn't address, and they don't understand it. And that's why I didn't want to hang a shingle out and say, I'm a licensed social worker, or I'm a psychiatrist, or I'm a psychotherapist. Like, no, I didn't do that. So that's why I have several coaching and a lot of marriage coaching certifications. And what I love about what I do is, like, these people want the advice and they want to know how to get on the field and do it. They're looking for advice, but a counselor isn't allowed to give out advice, because say, a counselor says, whatever. And then later on, they're like, well, my therapist told me to do that. Right? Because say it doesn't go well, then they're blaming the therapist. Mm-hmm. Well, my therapist, essentially told me to just cut the cords and get a divorce. Oh, that's not okay, right? They're not allowed to do that. So when I'm working with marriage couples, I never even say to them, like, you guys need to break up and divorce. I don't say that. The most I've said to one couple is, you need to separate so that we can work on this and you're not triggering each other every night. I know you don't want to hear it. Nobody wants to be the one that has to move out of the beautiful house, but this isn't working with both of you in the house.
Yeah.
It's a reason why we do timeouts. When my son was bad, I'm like, get up to your room.
I was always in a timeout.
That's a timeout, right?
Oh, here I go again. Yeah.
But the timeout says, I can't do this right now. But when you're 2 adults, you can't say to your husband, hey, go into the study for 2 hours. I can't handle seeing you, and I'll just finish the dinner. It doesn't work that way, because they're allowed. They're adults. They're going to come out. It's not like a kid where you can keep them in there, right? So what I do that's so different is, I'm very honest. I'm very transparent. I'm hands-on. I'm like, look, remember what we said, and it's in the contract. You are the student. I am the teacher. You are agreeing to take your hands off. So traditional counseling, as well as a lot of the coaching programs, basically say the client is in control of their destiny. In these particular situations, I don't agree. So what I do with marriage counseling is, I'm like, look, the secret sauce works, but you don't get to choose that you're going to do this, but not this, right? Well, I'll agree to split up the chores like this, but then I'm not going to agree to go to Italy because I don't want to go on that trip. It's like, no, that's not how it works. In this, you're in an emergency room. Your marriage is failing. One of you's probably talked about divorce to your best friend. You need to be told what to do to come back together. Because right now you're like this. And the only way you're going to come back together is slow and steady with homework every day. It's the same homework for both of you. And slowly I'll add to it. And over time, you're going to start to like each other. But the first goal is to get you to talk to each other respectfully and to do some certain activities on your own. And then one activity is together, but it's only for 20 minutes. That's it. I'm like, I don't care what goes on for the rest of the time. If you feel like arguing, if you're feeling like you're in a bad mood, leave the room. So it works. It works. And they can't wait to come back. They do this. They come in with, they're like, hey, because it's all by Zoom now, pretty much, right? Hey, look, Judith, look at my notes. I look, not this one. This is blank, right? Look, I did my homework. I'm like, all right. And then the other one gets on Zoom like, hey, look. And they right? And the other one's like, I did more, right? And I'm like, what do we talk about? It's not the amount. It's that you did the 3 things I told you to do on the piece of paper. More is actually too much. So like, you're doing too much. This is like a 2-minute exercise. You did too much. And they're like, what? I'm like, I told you, I'm turning your world upside down. What you think is intuitive correctly is intuitively wrong. So I had to, I'm like retraining the brain.
Yeah. And that's what we need. And that's what we need to do really, is to just reprogram. Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of great, counselors and stuff out there as well. But, and I think it's important to, like you say, do your research.
Right. You have to do your research.
Yeah. Like just because somebody, like earlier you said, somebody recommends Sally, Joe, whoever, doesn't mean that's the right one for you and stuff. And then the third thing you do is, don't you, for dating?
Dating.
Oh, I want to hear a little bit about that.
Right. So the date coaching happened, obviously, or not obviously. It evolved because 4 years, actually probably like 3 years into the divorce coaching, I was getting some people that didn't want a divorce. So I was doing marriage coaching. But then what happened a little further out, like 3.5 years, was that people were coming back to me saying, who had gone through divorce coaching, and they're like, oh my God, it stinks out here. Like, it's terrible. I'm like, I know. It's a wild world out there in the dating arena. It's not for the faint of heart. And they're like, well, what am I going to do? I'm like, all right, since I've unfortunately done this more times than I want to admit, before my first marriage, I didn't get married till like 30. So I had a good 15 years of, up and down dating experience there. I have a lot of experience in this, so I'm going to help you. And I developed this way of doing it that was really proactive. And what I found was that everything was going online. So the secret is, with the dating thing, I'm like their dating buddy, and it's someone that's not their friend. I'm available all the time because this is my job, right? So like, say you want to ask your friend, like, I saw these 2 guys on Match.com. I don't know if I should go out with them or not, but you have to wait till your friend gets home that night, right? To talk about it. But because it's my job and I'm doing this all day, you call me, I can call you back usually within an hour. So my clients get callbacks, they get text messages back in like, I'll text back immediately pretty quickly, but then I'll get on the phone with them within 1 or 2 hours, right? So again, like a therapist won't do that. An attorney won't do that. And your friend won't do it because they're at work. So the secret is, I write their profile. This is a summary. So I write their profile and I get their pictures. So it's 3 to 5 pictures is the secret sweet spot. It's not 8 and it's not 1. It's not 2.
Fish.
Yeah. You should see the pictures out there. Number 1, what they think is a good picture. And number 2, how many they put up.
Yeah.
Right. So on my podcast, which is on relationships, like the last couple of weeks, and then a couple of months ago, we spent like 8 weeks in a row looking at like screen sharing on StreamYard, looking at Match.com profiles and evaluate.
I have to go watch that.
You gotta watch it. It's not to brag, but they're pretty darn good.
Oh my gosh.
So the secret is, because I'm not your mom, I'm not your best friend, I'm a little bit removed. So I know how to create a profile that attracts the right people, and I know how to teach people how to go get those people. So I guarantee within 3 or 4 months, my clients are meeting quality men and women, because I show them, even when we screen share, like a couple of months ago, I'll never forget this one client of mine said, can we just get online? Because this guy keeps writing to me, and I know you said like, write this back or whatever, but I don't know. He seems a little crazy. So I'm like, all right, we screen shared. You could tell he was crazy just by, there was a vibe in his pictures, and there was a vibe that she wasn't picking up in the things that he said in his profile. So I'm like, that's a yellow flag. That's a red flag. That's a yellow flag. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, see how he worded it? There's something there. That's a veiled weirdness right there. Like, nobody talks like that. She goes, I know. I thought he just had a flowery way of talking. I'm like, no. There's something there. And then, like, when a profile talks about things they don't want, like, I'm not looking for someone that's needy. I'm not looking for someone that's a gold digger. I'm not looking for someone that never gets off the couch. It's like, okay, now we just saw all the things that you've experienced that you don't want again. I'm like, we don't want to hear it.
Yeah. I want to know, what do you want? Yeah.
I care what you don't want. I just want to know what you want.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know what you're about. So the profiles are, 2 or 3 paragraphs on you. And then the fourth paragraph is what I'm looking for in a man or a woman. That's it. That's it. That's all they need, and then there's some other things, but it works. I mean, in 2019, I dragged my husband to 9 weddings that none of them were our friends. They were all my clients.
Wow. I haven't. So it's funny, like dating sites. So I tried the dating site for a bit,
Yeah.
and then I was like, what is it with these guys? I was like, I'd ask, so what do you like to do? Because, and I do look for those sites that are like, do the profiles where there is some positive, like you said, like, I don't want to hear all the negative stuff of what you don't want. How about tell me what you do want? Right.
Right.
So, and then as soon as you have a little chat, or they disappear, one of the two, but you have a little chat. And then as soon as you say, so tell me something more about you, or what do you like to do? I don't know. And then they completely disappear. So I'm like, is this like a trigger question or something? Do not ask this. And then another time, oh my God, this is so funny. Like, you sort of know me through networking and stuff.
Yeah.
I had to laugh. So during, I don't know, the first year of all the cuckoo times, right? That,
like 2020, you mean?
Yeah, I think that's
the first year of like post-divorce.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So I thought, you know what, I got to go on the dating site. I'm getting like, it's like, okay, let's try this dating site thing again. Because I would go on it, come off it, go on it. I felt like this was a full-time job, right? Yeah. Anyway, so I'm like, I'm going to go on Plenty of Fish. That's it. I'm going to go. Everybody tells me that they've met their spouse on Plenty of Fine, I'll go on it. So I go on it, weed through some people. I met this guy who was funny, texting back and forth, had a good sense of humor. Yep. Finally connected on the phone, and he was drunker than a skunk.
No way, really?
Was wasted. He's like, we should just go meet in a parking lot. Who gives a crap about COVID? And I'm like, dude, you don't even know me. Like, you don't know where I stand with anything, right? Wow. Anyway, so I was just like, yeah, red flag, done. I'm like, you don't even get a second phone call. Yeah. So he kept texting. Finally, I said to him, I was polite, and I said, look, this isn't a good match, yada, yada, yada. And I finally ended up blocking him. And then he got to me on Plenty of Fish. So I blocked him on Plenty of Fish. So, okay, fine. Next day, okay, let's try going back on again, right? I can't get on.
What?
I was locked out of Plenty of Fish. And I'm laughing. And I'm like, is this the universe telling me something? So I said to my friend, I'm like, because I kept trying to get on, and it said, and then I got it. I think I was like a message back saying you didn't follow the rules or whatever, right? So
what the heck was... What
so did you I think what happened is I hurt his ego, and he filed a complaint about me. This is the only thing I can think of, because I'm like, this is like, I don't know, like, does that happen that easy? But my friend told me, she's like, you know how many people I've blocked on here? And I never have that. So I'm like, I don't know. I did. And she starts laughing because she's known me for a long time. She's like, you, Karen, getting blocked. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is the universe saying, okay, Karen, maybe this isn't time for this right now in 2020, right?
Wow. But, if that is what happened, that just shows you how you dodged a bullet, because he really was a cuckoo town.
Right? Exactly. So, yeah, my spidey senses are pretty.
I mean, calling conversation on a phone call. Oh, my God.
Yeah. If anybody's listening to this, if you're on the dating site and your first phone call, do not be drunk or wasted. Well, I mean, maybe some people like that. I don't know.
I don't know. I think he probably, who knows, either he probably was an alcoholic, because I don't think somebody would be so nervous about a phone call that they would get drunk, right?
Yeah. And on the profile, it was like, he was a Tony Robbins fan, and he was Bob Proctor, like all these people. So I'm like, this guy understands my language. And anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So,
there's some wackos out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely want to chat with you more about this, because I'm ready to get back out there again. Right, I needed time for me to sort my own stuff out. Right, so, and you have a show. You have a show called Makeup or Breakup, right?
Right, and it's all about
a little bit about with that.
So we're covering the same topics that we're talking about here. We also talk about things like boundaries or the 5 love languages. I sort of call it the Judith and Lou show, because I have a manager of the podcast, and so he's on it, and we're talking like this. And so he sets it up and everything. It's really to just also allow people to like call in or chat. So people will put things in the chat. It used to be a radio talk show before they went online with it. And so I was doing it through a radio station in Massachusetts that went, and it reached all the way up into like northern New Hampshire, New Hampshire is a pretty big state. So in that case, they were calling in because it wasn't like this. It wasn't online. So it's kind of fun. But what I like about this is it's more interactive. Lou watches for the people to comment, and they can call in. They usually don't, but they could call in and then he'll put them on. So yeah, it's fun.
I have to check it out. Definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's, again, like I just got that book, The 5 Love Languages. So I'm just starting to read that now. And, I think it's important to understand what each other is like. And if you don't even know your own love language, or that there is this thing called the love language, because I didn't know anything about it. Right.
Yeah. Then you if you don't know it, then you can't, without knowing what yours are, you can't show somebody how to love you.
Yeah.
And so when you feel like he just doesn't get me, or it's like, I didn't want a fur coat for Christmas. All I wanted was a nice dinner out. Well, if they don't know your love language and they don't know like how to address that, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to go for the traditional, here's a sweater, here's a pair of cashmere mittens, like whatever people get for Christmas. Here's a box of chocolates for Valentine's Day. Meanwhile, like, you hate chocolates or you don't even like doing anything with Valentine's Day, but they can't help themselves because they're just running the way other people run.
Yeah.
So we have to teach them differently.
Yeah. And I think it's important, again, like, wherever you are in your relationship, learn what that love language is. Pick up that book, The 5 Love Languages. Because like you say, if you don't know what your love language is, or you don't know what makes you happy, how are you supposed to share that? How is somebody else supposed to? And I know I hear people saying, my spouse doesn't support me. And my favorite question is what does support look like? Right. And they don't know. I don't know. And it's like, well, if you don't know, how is it that they don't know?
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like, I don't know. It's hard because if people don't do, like you were talking earlier about how you took the time to heal and to really do some self-reflection and some self-work. If they don't take the time to do that, just saying, she was a terrible wife and we didn't get along and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but did you ever stop to figure out like exactly what were the things that you didn't like? Because a lot of times those things, if you don't try to help that other person recognize those things, I mean, people say she'll never change. And I say, you can't say that. You don't know, because how many times, like I'll never forget during my second divorce, we were at a mediation, court-ordered third-party mediation meeting, and the mediator could tell that like my husband's attorney was cuckoo town. So he finally said, we're not getting anywhere in here. I want the 2 attorneys out of the room. She's cuckoo town. So she went crazy. No, I got to be with him. He'll say he needs to be guided by me. I'm his attorney. The mediator's like, get out of my office. Get out of here. Right. And she was crazy because she knew that he had a soft heart, not a weak person, just had a soft heart. And that he was reasonable, which she didn't like. So she was trying to get more than he should have even been giving me, or I should have gotten from him. She was like evil. So as soon as within 6 minutes, this guy nailed it. And he could tell that I was trying to convey that all I wanted was. And so at one point, like my husband looks at me, he leans back his chair. He goes, that's all you're asking for? I'm like, I've been trying to say that through my attorney to your attorney for 2 months. 2 months. And every time my attorney talks to yours, she says no. Every time. So good for you. You just paid $10,000 for her to block the process. She was livid that he had agreed to this, but it was within the legal like parameters. It wasn't even like, I want 6 cars. It's like, no, I want the car that was always mine. That's worth $10,000 because it's 10 years old. Like, that's all I'm asking. Like, I want my car. And he's like, and this guy made $300,000 a year. Don't think it was a stretch. It was not a stretch. And the mediator is like, this is amazing. He goes, this is why I don't like people coming here with their attorneys. And I thanked him. I'm like, I'm so glad that you saw what was going on and that you asked the attorneys to leave the room. Mine's great. He hardly spoke up unless it was necessary, but she was cuckoo.
Wow. Crazy, crazy.
Yeah. So it's fun. It is a lot of fun, but yeah, but I love what I do,
Yeah.
Change for anybody is hard, like getting back into the dating world or, processing that or, making changes in your marriage or even making changes to your lifestyle because you have to go through a divorce and like you lost some income because chances are your spouse left with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
And it
change
is.
takes time.
Yeah, it is. Oh, no.
Wait, we're running. Oh my
Sorry,
gosh.
I don't know what happened. I know. I don't know. All of a sudden the screen went blank and then you're back again.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, we should wrap up anyway. We've been yapping.
Well, exactly. I know. I think that we could probably go on for a long time because I have
too much fun today.
But yeah, thank you, Judith, for sharing everything. Yeah. And now, I just want to ask you 2 questions. How do people get a hold of you?
Okay, so the best way to get me is to email me off my website. Okay. So my website is so easy. It's www. Obviously, Judith Jameson. There's an E in there, just like the Irish whiskey. JudithJameson.org. So there's a contact form on every page of the website. Just scroll down and send me some information, or people can text me, and my phone number is 781-249-1770.
Beautiful. Awesome. And it is in the show notes as well. So if people want to go there, they can find that. And one last question that I like to ask people, way off, nothing to do with divorce or anything, but nice. What does freedom mean to you?
That's a really good question. Freedom for me right now, because I feel like that definition's probably changed. Freedom for me is the ability to do what I want with my work and my spare, my spare time, my downtime, and feel free enough to not let people's judgments of what I'm doing get in the way.
I love that. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I always like to ask people, like, what does freedom mean to you, right?
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing. Yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us on another Freedom Starts Now show. Again, follow Judith, reach out to her. She is so easy to speak to. And, connect with her on social media or on your website and everything. So thank you once again for joining us. We will be back next Thursday, 1:00 Eastern time. And have a great
text messages on here. Are people writing in?
Not that I can see, but I find sometimes people show up later and, it's different. And I'm still navigating my way through StreamYard here.
Yeah. So, do you have a chat? Do you have a chat thing where people can post a chat?
Yeah, I do have that.
Because I just didn't know if that was, unless that's the noise of people logging in.
I don't know what that noise is, but anyway, we'll wrap this up and I will see you in a minute. Bye for now, everybody. Have a great week.
Thanks for having me.
Next week.
Yep.